So I went in, enjoyed myself, came back. She got even. You're usually, if you're out of country 30 days, I considered a tour. You went home. 29th day, back to Vietnam. I went and I finished out my tours in these 3 for a battalion-sized operation.
So you're back home, and you're back home. And
No, I'm back in Vietnam.
Oh, you're back in, but then you're really not in Vietnam that much longer before you're
June, July, half of July.
And then you come home, and when you come home, there's a big change in your life, in your status.
Well, you really are lost. I was 19 years old then, 20. I was a first lieutenant. I had been a company commander, a platoon leader. I had a good year of combat under my belt. Couldn't drink legally, couldn't vote back then because you couldn't, you were still 21. And I had to have my parents sign for me to get married.
So that was a major thing that happened.
Yeah, and I got married and I think I got back in the middle of July and was married August 3rd. And it's the marriage list, which does happen quite a bit with Vietnam veterans. It didn't work out, but it's a sad scenario because it's tough for them because I went back to Vietnam married and left a child while I was over there, and that's hard.
That's really tough.
Hard.
I know that after you got married, then you went to, was it Fort Bragg or Fort Benning?
Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Okay, and what was your job there?
There I was a training company commander. Then subsequent to that, I got promoted to captain, and I became a battalion executive officer. And my wife, we lost a baby, and then my wife got pregnant. And at Fort Bragg, I'll say this, I had a 90-day assignment, or 45 days, I'm not sure. It was the worst job I ever had.
And what was it?
And that's where I had to go out and knock on the door and tell them their son or husband wasn't coming home. And that was, because you have this spiel you have to go through, they know what you're there for.
They see you coming.
See you coming, you have your uniform on. I was a captain, so I did first lieutenant. You always did usually one rank below.
Below you?
Yeah.
Well, what's odd is that you still do funeral detail because you're part of the Marine Corps funeral detail here.
I'm an Army officer that's a part of the Marine Corps funeral detail.
Yes, and tell us how many times you've presented.
Tomorrow will be my final one, and that will be number 500 that I've presented the flag at the funeral. So I decided.
That's probably the saddest
there's plenty
part.
There's a lot of them that have done more. Well, it
means so much. Every time I see it,
it's the most.
It's very intimate too, because you're looking at the
I do it
person.
very low key. I do it very quietly, and I look them in the eye, and I mean, it's coming from my heart, and they're never fail to look back at me. I think I've had one that just kept looking down, but every one of them usually looks you right back in the eye. And but the part about Fort Bragg, that was different because they were young lieutenants. And like I said, usually I did 13 of them, and I'd say maybe 9 or 10 of them were 9. I think it was 9 were single, thank God, and then four of them were married and 2 or 3 of them had kids, and of course they're young kids that never see their father. But then after that, I went to flight school. I
was going to say, well, let's move this up a little bit because now we're at 1969, and you did do 2 tours, and I would like to hear about that second tour because
I went to flight school, which was
you were a platoon leader. First tour. Now, see, you've kind of changed things a little bit here with this second tour.
Not really. I was afraid to fly after that time when I got it in stomach. I had to overcome that, so I went to flight school. And I discovered I love to fly if I'm in control. So
you're in control.
Typical male control freak. But
that's interesting.
It oh God, it was challenging to learn how to fly a helicopter. It's nothing like an airplane. An airplane's a breeze, but compared to a helicopter. But I went to Fort Walters, Texas, and that was the primary. And then a little bit after the first of the year, because my first child was born December 31st of '69, went to Hunter Army Airfield in Savannah, Georgia. And back then you were getting per diem as a captain. You know, you were living pretty good, pretty good. And then,
well, let's talk about what you were flying, because I'd like to spend a little time just talking about the Loach, because that's what you flew. And actually, this is a light observation helicopter that was used in Vietnam, and it sort of replaced the Korean War Sioux and Raven. And the thing about this particular helicopter is that it was part of the Pink Team, which I didn't realize. And the Pink Team meant that the Loach and Cobra worked together, and the Loach was the seeker.
The ones on the screen doesn't have a minigun on it. The one I flew did.
Right, because I remember you told me that, and it's in this center picture we see it. But anyway, the Loach is really the hunter. The hunter.
Called Hunter Killer Team.
Hunter Killer.
Some people like to call it bait.
Well, hunter, seeker, hunter, or...
they were called Hunter Killer Teams, but let's face it,
Yes.
we were bait. But if they shot at us, then they were really entrenched, because they knew what we had at a beck and call, because all we had to do is, you know,
That's what was...
click the radio, and in came the Cobras.
See, that was the whole thing. That was the whole thing. Okay, hunters, seekers, your job was to find them, drop the colored smoke, and call in reinforcements, and the
We never
Cobras
usually would drop smoke. There wasn't enough time.
There wasn't enough time.
You had a
Well,
minigun.
yeah, tell me about it
you had a
then.
minigun, and if you start taking fire, you had, because the aircraft was small, you only had enough ammo to basically, you couldn't carry a lot of ammo. So you'd fire, and that thing fired 3,000, in excess of 3,000 rounds a minute. So I mean, it didn't go rat-tat-tat, it was wow. And you'd fire about a 3-second burst, or you'd melt the barrels. And then you just fired to knock their heads down, so you could get out of there.
Okay, so you could get out. That, when I see that thing, it says that it's shaped like an egg. It really is.
And
And
its
it's
construction,
light.
yeah, it's very light, but it's extreme. It was made by Hughes Aircraft Corporation. Extremely powerful,
And how about the maneuverability of it?
tremendous. It is. I flew Cobras, which are, you know,
Bigger?
the dashing gunship.
Oh.
And then I flew other aircraft, but that thing was the one. I mean,
Now I understand too. It's kind of it looks small, so it's like 4 to 6,
4.
maybe 4. Okay, 4 can fit in there.
but it was faster than a Huey, faster. It wasn't as fast as a Cobra in a dive, but
Oh, really?
no.
'Cause I thought it
faster.
was.
Yeah, no. It was maneuverability and power. In Vietnam, because it was so hot and humid, you had the density altitude, so it was very difficult to get lift. But that aircraft, you would never run out of power. You just wouldn't. I mean, any other aircraft, you'd start bleeding, but not that one. No, it was a wonderful aircraft. And I went down in it several times, and it was extremely crash worthy.
How many times? How many? And that was one of the things you told me, because you compared flying that thing and being hit to a boxer.
Well, yeah. If you're going to fly hunter killer, you're going to take hits.
Okay.
And then I don't know if we'll have time, but when I flew in Laos, the Laos invasion, that was atrocious. Where you
I'd
take
like
hits
to.
because but no, you're going to. I think I know a grand total. I went down 13 times.
Okay. One of the things that I read, and now that I've got you sitting here, you can tell me whether or not this is true, is that they were easy to fix.
Well, there were thousands of moving parts, all of which are critical to flight. If you lost an engine, there was no problem to land it. If you lost a transmission, you were in deep doo-doo. But they were a complex aircraft. Everything was an interchangeable part. I flew those from July of '70 through November of '70. And then about the time I got, what you would call it, my third Purple Heart.
Yes, your third. Let's
we
talk
were
about
shot down, and I ended up getting wounded plus a broken back and a compression fracture.